Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. We're digging deeper into DS9. Yeah, it's our second episode, and already this could be about some of us. A man alone on It's All Been Tricked Before. Don't be a man alone. Get on Facebook and follow us. It's All Been Tricked Before. Spelled just like it sounds. Sounds just like it spells. It's All Been Tricked Before. Have a lot of fun with us out there. We're having a lot of fun. I enjoy it a lot. I'm told it because I'm an older person. A lot of us are, if you're into Trek. And but hopefully, even if you are, you know what? We might get you to join Facebook. You're about to get zucked. But either way, follow us in there. It's All Been Tricked Before. And this is All Been Tricked Before. Don't be a man alone, but this is a man alone on It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome out to another episode. It's All Been Tricked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Stephen.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome, before we dive into this episode of Man Alone, I did want to mention, because I forgot to on last week's podcast, the episode was directed by Winwich Colby, one of our regular Next Gen directors. And so I don't forget, this episode was directed by Paul Lynch, who directed 5 episodes of Next Gen, ending with First Duty, and then we'll go on to direct 5 episodes of DS9. Since we've already talked about them, don't feel the need to dig in too deep, just wanted to mention it and throw it out there. We are talking A Man Alone. What are your first impressions?
Well, as I said before, last week, about this episode and the last one, I liked the potential it's showing me for the series. And this one, I think, is really where that started hitting home for me. I'm hoping that there are more episodes like this in the sense that they're making good use of the setting with lots of characters coming and going through, lots of main characters they can explore, shifting perspectives. So I noticed that when we had Quark and Odo talking, we're getting a little bit more establishing their frenemy dynamic, but also them watching, 2 of the other main characters coming down the stairs and just talking about that. We know where they're coming from. We know where they're going to. And they're like following a nice thread, but kind of jumping perspectives, which I really enjoyed that. So this is what I would want from a series like this. So, yeah.
I thought this was not a bad space whodunit. And I often am somebody who's like, just tell us what the deal is on episodes. Because the payoff isn't great, but this one I thought the payoff was cool, and I thought the journey was really good, and the destination was satisfying. And Jimmy, you referenced this last week. This week we got to know a little more about Odo, so I thought all those things combined. I liked it. Yeah,
this took a classic Sherlock Holmes mystery of the dead body in the room with the locked door, which I believe in Sherlock Holmes wasn't like an ice bullet or a knife, an ice dagger that they used to stab the person that melted. So obviously they didn't go that route, but they used a classic Sherlock Holmes mystery with a science fiction explanation, and I appreciated that. As Stephen is fond of saying, I didn't think it hung the moon, but I thought it was good. And I'm pleasantly surprised, after having told you guys how bad season 1 is, that these first few episodes are not bad. So
this is what I've been saying. Continues. Yeah, I've been accusing you of this from the beginning, that it is nostalgia bias, or is it recency bias? I don't know. It's one of those.
I know there are some stinkers coming up. I know there are. But the whole season, maybe I exaggerated how much of the season was bad. So we start the episode with Bashir hitting on Dax hardcore, continuing that thread from the pilot, where he really wants to go out with her. And she's staring at a soap bubble that apparently is a puzzle game she's been playing for 140 years. And then that she uses to brush him off because he's like, oh, let me try. She's like, oh, I've been doing this for 140 years. You think you could try it? Whatever. We'll get into why I think Bashir might actually be able to solve it, but that's a story for another day, not for this episode. Because there are things about Bashir that I'm like, oh, maybe it would be kind of fun if they knew that this early and let him solve it. But the one thing I got out of the scene besides the flirting was the cold hands, which I don't know that we've established it yet, but Trills always have cold hands.
Is that something you had recalled from before at some point, or
the Trills have cold hands?
Yes.
Yeah, that's canon.
Okay. I wrote down, and even before that, the Trills are cold in this, relationship wise, but in TNG. The one Trill we met was hot to try. And I know at the time, Jimmy, you said...
They don't even look the same. These Trill look like Famke Janssen and The Perfect Mate. They don't look like the Trill.
Right.
And this is the way Trill will be portrayed from here on out, obviously.
I also think, and my hunch right now is that all this Bashir, Zach's stuff is going to be like Charles Boyle and Rosa on B99 as we get down the road. But I could be wrong. That's my theory.
I mean... Yeah, I'd be really upset with Dax if she dated him. And that's about all I'll say on that subject. I guess even at the time, maybe at the time this first aired, I took it a little more seriously. Having watched Dax for 7 seasons, I don't take it seriously at all.
I think it does get better when Zax and Cisco have the conversation about, Cisco's still... He's the one who's on the journey of, I knew you as this, and now you're this.
Right.
And I think this was the first episode where he's like, oh, yeah, things are a little different. But I think he thinks it's going to, not in a romantic way, obviously, but he's like, no, I'm going to still be friends with this. This is the same person.
Yeah, I mean, he mentions that she was like another father to him, or Curzon was like another father to him. And if Cisco were a character with daddy issues, then perhaps he would be attracted to her. But we will meet Cisco's father, and I would not describe their relationship as fraught. It's not Spock and Sarek. It's a good relationship. So I don't think... I guess I had even forgotten that they toyed with the idea of a Cisco Dax thing in the early days, and I'm really glad that it shook out that she's the old man that he remembers, and that's who he is to her, or who she is to him.
Yeah.
But everybody else is after Jadzia Dax at this point. I mean, Quark is, Bashir is, everybody that Caesar is.
Yeah,
Steven is, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I built up a couple things here about this now. So that opening scene, I got the feeling that they were showing us that a little bit of time had passed, and that it was at least a little bit more familiarity between Dax and Bashir at this point. About the idea of Bashir having or being able to solve the puzzle. Yeah, I was a little kind of like, I was kind of hoping they would show some sort of potential like that, but at the same time, they gave us an opportunity to see Dax toy with him a bit.
Yeah,
messing with his concentration, so that it kind of took the yes or no out of the answer. There was more of a comedic bit there.
I mean, I love Jadzia Dax and just the way she handles this kind of attention. She handles it with such skill and coolness.
It's hard for me to
without being
imagine,
insulting.
Right. One, from Jadzia's perspective, it's hard for me to imagine having my mind put into like, if I live another, even at my age right now, if I were to be put in like a 20-year-old woman's body or something like that, and just having to intellectually deal with being hit on in a certain way. And it's not even about like, oh, I'm repulsed by men or whatever. The body is what it is, and that we're going to come to that subject later in the episode. It's just the idea of being bored or just something, right? I mean, and the other thing is from Cisco's perspective, if one of you were to be turned into Jadzia Dax, and I knew that, like, it's a completely different body, everything's fine. I would have a hard time, I think, getting past that.
You wouldn't want to date me if I look like Barry Farrell?
It would be, yeah.
I'm a little bit insulted now.
Well,
early in the episode, I think Keith hinted at this in his opening view. We get the Odo and Quark dynamic, which is the frenemy. I love there's so many great relationships on this show, but right up there with Bashir and Garrick is Odo and Quark for me. They have such a fun dynamic.
We have the coupling conversation. Men are from Bajor and women are from Talos 4 thing. I was like, this was like straight out of although I thought it could have sounded like a stale stand-up bit, it still sounded like something from the 90s of, then you end up doing this and da 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 da. Oh,
right. It was the relationship talk about being controlled by a relationship. He was
having to
like
compromise.
Yes. Yeah. And then you end up listening to Klingon symphonies or whatever and all that stuff or whatever. But I thought it was amusing in the sense that initially he was just like, it started with, I'm just not into it. And then it ended up being like a very specific, this happened to me. I didn't like it.
Well, I was just very stuck in his ways, but it probably won't surprise you that this story is by a very old man. Well, the teleplay was by Michael Piller, who's one of the showrunners and creators with Rick Berman, but the story was by Michael Piller and Gerald Sanford. I looked up Gerald Sanford. He got his start way back in 1957 writing for Matinee Theater, then Dr. Kildale and Breaking Point. Wow. A lot of episodes of The Virginian. And then later he wrote for Chips, T.J. Hooker, Knight Rider, before contributing this one episode to Star Trek. So he was born in 1934, and I was like, "Yep, Odo sounds like an old man." I wonder if that played in. Was that the director?
If I can get a little bit personal about myself, since Stephen has done so on occasion on here,
Sure.
As an introspective person, I have learned that I have those kinds of issues in relationships. Typically, that it's just those kind of compromises. Yeah, those compromises will come back, and it builds up. I mean, it's hard for me to value being with a person for however long over having control over some of those kinds of choices. And I think a lot of people have to learn that about themselves before they can. Yeah.
I think a lot of what Odo says is not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I've been in a couple for a long time. I mean, several different couples, but for a long time. But I've also had many friends who, gone through divorces, whether men or women, and they're like, you know what, I'm not in a hurry to get in another relationship. I'm like, do you need to be?
It feels like it though. Society,
society says, hey, I'll get you somebody, and some people are just wired that way, and clearly I, in some way, am, because I've been coupling for a long time, unlike Odo. But I think, despite like I said, the '90s Venus Mars thing, or Bejor, whatever, if you've got everything you need, do you need to couple? And by coupling, I don't mean
in the sense that Quark might mean it. He seems like he might be making
habitating.
a window.
Yeah. I mean, do I need a mate?
You could still meet up with somebody for athletic fun on occasion, but
right. Yeah, and is there a rush is there a hurry to do that and all that stuff? So yeah.
Well, I was going to say I think the dated portion of that is the implication that it's exclusive to. It's implied by the wording that it is women who caused that, but it could just be.
Yeah. That's the way it felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just Odo's personality, that he's just crotchety and set in his ways, which is such a shame, because from a selfish perspective, who wouldn't want to date a shapeshifter? Then you have an infinite number of bedroom partners.
I mean, Star Trek 6, the greatest shapeshifter of all time.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion.
Yeah, not part of Odo's species, though. Different species. The thing that sparks this conversation between Odo and Quark about coupling is we get to see Miles and Keiko fighting at the bar, which this is the first introduction of Keiko O'Brien, Rosalind Chow, coming over from Next Gen. Feels like she should have been there earlier and should have been in more episodes, but she will see her from time to time on DS9. Never as often as I would have liked, I think.
I get this gets us to where we're going with that plot line and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we see Keiko O'Brien, the couple name Keiko O'Brien, fighting more than anything. And I know that's dramatic purposes or whatever, but can we see those guys go out and have a good time every once in a while? Because I am speaking of coupling and that kind of stuff. I'm just like, hey, you guys want to go out with it? Hey, you guys want to go out with Keiko O'Brien? No, I don't. They're just going to fight the whole time. I do not. I'm going to go to Quark's. I'm going to play some space roulette. I'm going to get drunk. I do not want them around. They're just going to they're going to get in a fight about something stupid, and that's going to ruin the whole night. And all of a sudden, this is my water bottle. I got to take care of them. So,
well, she's only in 19 episodes, so you won't have to go out with her much.
But I will say this.
It's only like 2 or 3 times a season.
Yeah, I thought Miles came around and was like, I'm really trying to help you here. And she also came around to like, I don't want you to turn this down, and I get that too. So
that's where I appreciated what we got in that emissary book between the two of them, that she encouraged him to take this job and everything, and then just got dissatisfied when she got here. Mm-hmm. I mean, that whole thing where she doesn't like it here, and Odo was like, yeah, but who does? Cracked me up.
Right. And that happens. I mean, depending on jobs and that kind of stuff, I know when I moved here with my first wife, she was miserable, and eventually, and not just because of me, but she is. We'd moved here.
Here being in Ohio, you mean,
sorry,
or just
here being in Columbus, the heart of it all. And not that Columbus is anything like Deep Space Nine, but she wasn't on a remote space station, but kind of, if you consider this a blue circle and surrounded by red. But either way, but yeah, so I understand that too. So, but I am with you, Jimmy. I like that it came back around to kind of a, hey, I get where you are, and I'm trying to help.
Yeah.
So
if you think about it, DS9's a pretty bleak place at this point.
Yeah.
We're just starting to get the fact that, okay, this wormhole is going to bring all this commerce and growth and everything. But right now they had to convince Quark to stay because there was going to be no place to go on the promenade. Like, it's not a good situation. So you can't blame her for that. What we probably saw was a moment of frustration that had built up rather than their daily conversation.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't make this note, but I love the idea that you just said, Jimmy, of like this wormhole is going to bring so many more people in here, which makes sense for having all these different characters as we go along. But also, it's just interesting from a world building or galaxy building perspective. So I think that's really cool.
About that fight, still, I was a little annoyed at first. Reflexively, there's the whole tone involved. When I just thought about it for a moment, she got a chance to vent the frustrations. Miles talked her through it. Would this help? Would you like this? What would And it seemed a little irrational at first, but in her position, I mean, those things wouldn't sound acceptable either. But she still needed to talk about them and then figure something out.
So before we can leave Quarks, though, Odo has to get in a fist fight with a Bajoran that we'll find out. Somebody say his name because I can't.
Iguodon.
It's Ibudan.
Yeah, Iguodon.
Maybe
Iguodon?
I thought they were saying Iguodon.
Odo gets in a fight with him and then tells him he has 26 hours to get off the station, which I appreciated that they did not take the time. But they did not take the time to explain to audiences that's one day. They just left it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't make that connection until you said it again just now because I don't.
Being a DS9 fan, I know how long a day is on DS9, but at this point, viewers wouldn't have known that. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was just like, all right, all the shit. All right, everyone leaves at noon tomorrow. That's when we shoot.
No. I'll give you 1 day plus 2 hours because I'm a nice guy.
I know when the ships leave, the dock isn't even open by that point. If I give you 24 hours right now.
Yeah, I loved it.
O'Brien suggests Keiko put up plants or create an arboretum on the station. I think that would have been a better solution than what ends up happening. She's a botanist. She studies plants. I feel like she should have opened an arboretum.
Yeah.
What happens feels forced to me because her daughter's not even old enough to attend the school, and she decides to create this school. I don't know. It just felt weird. We don't know what to do with her, so we'll make her the de facto teacher. Yeah,
it feels like they're making her a school marm to me.
Yeah. Well,
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and I don't like it.
Yeah, story-wise, the decision to make her character that doesn't make much sense, and that is forced. But at the same time, I can understand why that would be a better solution for the problem than just having a garden there.
Well, yeah, there's no stories that would take place in the garden. You have Jake as a main character and Nog reoccurring. You'd want a school.
Well, but I'm not even talking about the writing aspect. I'm talking about the character. As far as her dissatisfaction was about the nature of the environment. Was this building an arboretum wouldn't fix the larger issue of this being a bad place for kids to be around her families. So
yes, but it would give her a happy place to go. And work and do what she's trained to do.
Yes, but I think that from her perspective, again, the family is a mother and so on. It just, I think maybe she was starting to change her mind about her profession too, it not being enough to fix anything.
Maybe
it is a matter of perspective.
Oh, yeah. You'll notice that Hannah Haiti played Molly O'Brien, reprising the part she was in one episode Next Gen in Rascals. Same actress. Yeah. She will be in 11 episodes of DS9, so fewer than Rosalind Cheo's Keiko, but she'll be there a lot.
I'm down on the Space Kids usually, but that is one cute Space Kid.
She is. I'm sad she's in the show so little, but yeah.
I'm wondering if I didn't really watch the lips closely enough, and I'm not sure if she delivered that line.
It was
nice, kind of.
It was very naturalistic, for sure. That's for sure. Which is what people call me.
I mean, Hannah Haiti, when this was aired in '93, would have been 5 years old. I mean, my daughter, that couldn't do any better. I can tell you that. And not knocking my daughter. I'm just saying, like, for a 5-year-old. Yeah. So Jake finally meets Nog in canon. So just forget their plot line in the book Emissary, apparently, where they meet. Because they never met on screen until here. But, Jake needs somebody to get in trouble with on the station. So, of course, Aaron Eisenberg's Nog, who we met in the pilot, will be that frequent companion especially in these early seasons. But as I mentioned, he's going to be in a lot of episodes. He'll be in 47 of episodes of the series, so more than twice as many episodes as Keiko. He'll be around a lot. And he has one of the best arcs of the series, I feel. Nog has a great arc.
Yeah.
He gets real heavy in the later seasons, too. Like, his appearances are lighter in the first couple of years, and then we get to see him a lot more later.
He stopped taking care of himself, kind of let himself go.
Right. Yeah.
He got a lot heavier.
Nog has a really good growth arc I think you'll enjoy.
I enjoy
he grows too.
Them playing pranks. And it did make me think, because initially I was like, what, they just now figured out a school? But then it makes sense that there's only 5 kids or whatever. But it also made me think, yeah, I guess everyone's homeschooled, right? Or something.
Well, by this point, I was going to say, by this point in the future, technology, we've already seen it happen here.
Right.
That would be a solution that would come up for.
Yeah. Speaking of which, those desks with the computers were so cheesy. Oh my god.
Well, we never saw them come on either.
No, we didn't.
Our Nog was just going to be homeschooled by his dad, but I will say one of the best tie-ins ever is they started putting out these young adult Star Trek novels when I was a kid around this era, and there's 12 of these books that are just Jake and Nog getting into trouble in the station. Yeah, this came out in 94, so the year after.
When you say getting into trouble, are they like just solving mysteries or
depends.
Pranks?
I mean, this one, the Star Ghost, they do have to solve the mystery of the Star Ghost, but they're not always mysteries. They're just little adventures on the station. Right. And all 12 of them are set during this era where they're young children. They're in their younger stage, just hanging around.
And I love Eggnog.
You think of where Jake and Nog grow to and what they become later. Those aren't part of these books. So we find out what happened with Odo and the Bajoran and how Odo basically put him in prison, but now he's been pardoned. And Odo talks to Sisko about justice trumping the law, and Sisko's basically like, if you feel that way, there's the door, because that's not how things are going to operate on my station. Odo is a very strong-willed character with a very specific point of view, and seeing how he fits in is an interesting story as it goes.
Odo and the Bajoran was going to be a spin-off, but they never got off the ground, like BJ and the Bear.
I hadn't thought about this before, but since you pointed out that scene, it does also demonstrate that Sisko does have his hard lines, his limits about the way procedure needs to be done. He's going to play, neutral good character. So I would say.
Yeah, mostly. Nog and Jake play a prank with fleas that make you change color.
I like
and then get caught. And then get caught.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That is what I was thinking about just then, or before. I was like, we're gonna get to that. It's too much for me. We'll move on.
Well, then we see the Bajoran that Odo has the feud with, Ebudon, who we didn't mention was played by Stephen James Carver. 15 credits. Best known for Liar Liar, 2 episodes of Next Gen, this, Dark Skies. Not a lot of credits there. He did an episode of Ellen, but a couple episodes of The Golden Palace. But no Seinfeld there. Yeah, this is his only DS9 appearance. But he is killed in a holodeck, knifed during a massage, which, I mean, as far as deaths go, I guess that was pretty relaxing.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize at first it was a holodeck.
I didn't either. I was like, oh, man, this is a great massage parlor.
Or I'm sorry, hollow sweets. They're hollow sweets.
You got the webbed fingers. I'm like, this is great. And then I'm like, oh, this
I call them waffle fry fingers.
Yes.
Because the webbing was both perfect. Ways.
And then as soon as they're like, oh, he's in a hollow suite, I'm like, of course, shut it down. Shut it down.
But the safeties were off.
I was glad
Quark doesn't have safeties on. I don't know.
Right. I was just glad it didn't end up being a holodeck malfunction. That made me happy.
Yeah, the way the hollow suites are portrayed at Quark's is it's like a small room that you'll see going upstairs. But it's funny, that does not limit them when they do holodeck adventures in DS9. They can all spread out and be in part of a big room.
I love the idea that having a holosuite at a place with a casino and a bar and all that, it makes me feel like it's got hourly rates. It makes me feel like it's that kind of motel or
it is.
Or like at a truck stop. Yeah. So
it's at least heavily implied that that's what Quark's holosuites are used for.
Yeah.
Basically, the same thing Riker uses the holodeck for.
Right.
For playing jazz.
Because I almost wrote the note down. Are people having sex in there? And I was like, wait a minute, we've talked about this. Of course they are.
Yes, definitely. What happens after the murder is they lock down the station so no ships can depart, which, I mean, they'll do it again later, but it's something that comes up in the series, but that's something that would never happen on a starship because it's not relevant. And you think about the hassle that causes when you've got a busy commerce port, not so much in this early season where it's not busy, but later if they have to close down the nobody can leave. It becomes a much bigger deal.
Odo starts his investigation and he looks at Ibudan's itinerary. Did you guys see the glaring entry in his itinerary or whatever?
That's an Odo?
No. Well, that's the one they wanted you to look at. But
I should have gone back and paid attention to that because I knew there was maybe some Easter eggs or something, right?
There is one on the first screen that says "Departure from Alderaan Spaceport."
No way.
No way.
Yes, go back and look.
Oh my God.
I was like, wait, what?
But Alderaan was destroyed a long, long time ago, so why is there a spaceport? You think it's just an asteroid belt. The Alderaan asteroid belt.
It's a commemorative spaceport.
Does anybody even still remember the planet Alderaan at this point?
Well, and I thought, oh, that's funny because,
could have been a different
May
one.
94, and I was like, wait a minute, no, they were going to Alderaan, so yeah, it's the Alderaan Memorial.
Yeah.
But
I missed that.
That literally an Easter egg. It was great. Yeah. I was like,
that's just Star Wars ripping off Star Trek that they named that planet after the log entry.
I thought I was that drunk and that tired that I was like, nope, hang on. And then I froze it and kept reading it over and over. Like, yep, that is what it says. So that was great. Kudos.
We also get the clue that the dead man requested a double bunk, even though he was in there by himself, which is suspicious.
Yeah.
And nobody else was there. But the evidence pointing to Odo is so neat. But I think it also tells us something cool about Odo's personality, that he doesn't hide any of that. He doesn't worry about what other people are going to think about it. Like, he knows it's damning. He tells them anyway. He's like, yep, this is damning.
He even suggests, he's like, well, it would have had to be somebody that could get through the cracks, like, say, a shapeshifter, and then maybe the strongest stinger. Maybe not the strongest stinger in Star Trek history, but it's a pretty good stinger.
I didn't. There's a music thing they did.
Oh yeah, he's like, it'd have to be somebody who could somehow get through the cracks, like say a shapeshifter.
I liked how this episode ended
really
with
distracted.
Odo limping down the promenade, and then all of a sudden he started walking normal, and he'd gotten
Nice.
No, Odo it doesn't even occur to him to try to cover it up, and I think that is the other side of the coin of he's devoted to this justice no matter what.
And Kira, I think, is the one who says, like, well, he's not even trying to cover it. He's doing everything. He's
out there. But that's how you get away with it.
That's
you don't
exactly
even try to cover it up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I thought too. That's exactly what a criminal would do.
Great way to mastermind it if you really, if you
few
steps ahead.
That's early in the series. You could suspect that he actually did it.
Yeah.
But especially from perspective looking backwards, I obviously knew he didn't do it. So
I mean, it's a matter of perspective, always.
Cisco forbids Jake from seeing Nog, so that means they're going to become best friends.
Right.
I mean, has he never even heard one thing about parenting at this point? They mentioned there are 12 other children within their age range, but they give like a 6-year age range. That's not really
it's like 8 to 16 or something. It's like
no, it's 8 to 16.
Should 8-year-olds be hanging out with 16-year-olds? No.
I mean, that's what the school bus is for.
There's a conversation going on in Quark's casino. I'm calling it casino now. And the camera's following them. And then it stops and it comes back to the table with Eddie Albert and the locals talking about Odo. And that's when Quark is like, hey, I hate that guy, but he's a good he's on the up and up as far as this goes. And he didn't kill that guy. But it's very good fellas, like camera moving with them. And again, that's the thing I mentioned this last week. I like the idea of all these nooks and crannies in this place. And everyone seems smushed together, which makes it even more like we're smushed together on this rock just going round and round. We're not traveling to another world. There's no Riza in our future. We're stuck on this dingy thing. So I really like that. I like that.
That shot. You mentioned Eddie Albert. Zara is the character's name, played by Edward Lawrence Albert.
Yeah.
Best known for Butterflies Are Free, Midway, Galaxy of Terror, and Chinaman's Chance.
Yeah.
But he has 130 credits.
Oh,
he's that last title. Jeez.
He's Eddie Albert, who you guys might know from Green Acres. It's his son, and he was on everything in the 70s. And he started out as like the young heartthrob, and then at some point he morphed into he was always the bad guy. If he was in a show, he was the bad guy. No doubt.
My first thought was he looks like a poor man's Ray Wise.
That's good, yeah. But as soon as I saw him in this episode, I'm like, he's the bad guy. And I was thinking he was a murderer, but he wasn't. But he was still not a good person.
So you're talking about the ringleader of the mob, essentially?
Yeah. Yes.
I really liked his voice.
Yeah.
That was they made him. He was just like unnecessarily smooth for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was the guy in the hood on the back that we'll later find out who but it's actually played by a different actor when he's the old man in the hood. Played by Tom Clunas, best known for Ryan's Hope, the 60s version of Hamlet, Search for Tomorrow. 24 credits, only Trek credit here. But yeah, he's somebody. I thought it was interesting that they didn't try to put makeup on him, which made him more obvious, even with the hood, that they just cast an older actor.
Yeah.
I wondered when they kind of pulled off the face later if it was the same actor or not. Yeah, no, it wasn't. Also, Stephen, in terms of Quarks, they generally call it Quarks Bar, but the official name is, and this is true, this is canon, Quarks Bar, Grill, Gaming House, and Holosuite Arcade. Generally just shortened to Quarks or Quarks Bar.
Yeah, it sounds like
At one point, it's also renamed Quarks Bar and Holding Company, but yeah.
It sounds like a translation into English of something. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think you just have to list everything that's there. Cardassians are literal people. You have to tell them everything that's in there. Because, he ran the Joint Wonder Cardassian rule.
Oh, just to go back to Eddie Albert Jr., I did not know that he passed away in 2006. Only 55.
Oh, that's too bad.
I was going to say, why haven't we seen him? Lung cancer. That's why his voice was so great. Lung cancer.
So Odo mentions there's like 500 people that would want to frame him. I literally would have appreciated a more specific number, but he's not Data, so, I like Quark hearing the Bajorans gossiping about Odo and actually defends him. I mean,
yes.
That's where the frenemy comes in, because I do think that Quark and Odo have some respect for one another in the game they're playing, even if they are at odds on the law and decency. Rom is really rude to Keiko. Rom, played by Max Grundencheck, who was in the pilot, but just like labeled as like pit boss or something.
That's who was the Scorsese scene. It was her following Rom around to all the different tables he was checking on, and then it cuts over to Eddie Albert as they walk off and I really like that.
Yeah, Rom will be in 37 episodes, so not as many as Nog, but more than Keiko. He'll be in quite a few episodes of DS9, and I like Rom a lot, but this does not feel like Rom at all to me. It doesn't sound like Rom that we get to know. The voice is different. It's the same actor, but he is not locked into the character of Rom yet. Instead, he's playing him as like a basic Ferengi pit boss, which is not who Rom is at all. And that whole thing about, my son can't listen to a female, that does not gel with the Rom we're going to get to know. So it's weird, but I think at this point they just didn't even realize that was going to be a character, I don't think.
When Steve mentioned the voice again, I was going to say I would have been more flattered if Colleen had confused that guy for me.
That's Crunchick.
Yeah, the ringleader.
Eddie Albert.
Yes.
Junior.
So Cisco finally relieves Odo of duties this late in the episode, over Kira's objection, by the way. I mean, based on the conflict of interest, he should have been relieved much earlier, right?
Yeah.
If this was a starship, he would have been Worf would have been relieved in the first scene.
I mean, that's even more of that's what the killer would do, is like, hey, don't worry, I got it. I'm investigating myself.
I did appreciate, though, when Cisco tells Odo, personally, I don't believe you're guilty. And Odo's like, I don't believe you. You don't know me. You don't know if I'm guilty. You have no reason to say that. And I appreciated that. That's straight shooting. Mm-hmm. The security office is attacked and damaged. And at first, I forgot what that was, but the genuine hate crimes and the mob mentality is a cool element to the story. I'm glad they included, but also is scary, especially in the modern day with everything that's going on in the world.
I like the worst thing they could call him was Shifter.
What's going to be cool is in season 2, when they hold the January 19th hearings, and they talk about when the mob broke into the security office and how they were directed by Ibudan, who was prime minister at the time.
And I was going to say, maybe as a non-shapeshifter, I don't really understand what a slur shifter is. So, but
I mean, I don't know. They just needed something.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jimmy. I felt like the message still came across.
So we get that other really good scene with Quark and Odo, where Quark's kind of taunting Odo, and then Odo asks him for a job, and Quark's like, you got me. But I think Odo was serious. I really do.
Yes.
Because as much as he dislikes Quark, he's one of the few people that he knows what he's getting into. Because the rest of the people are so new on the station. He's been around Quark a long time. They have history.
I was going to say, does it speak to him being one of the people that actually wants to stay there as well? Like,
I mean, Quark didn't want to stay there. He was blackmailed into staying there.
Right. I meant Odo.
Yeah, he wants to stay on the station. It's all he knows.
Right.
I liked that Bashir ended up taking Sisko's lunch date with Dax.
I thought that was
Bashir and then they're just friends is funny and all that. It's fine, but it was just that whole like, oh man, we're going to lunch. She's like, I'm busy, and Bashir's like, I'm free.
The look they gave in the lab is funny. And,
we've all been in that situation.
Yeah. And then I thought it was dangerous to go have lunch while there's something we don't know what it is growing in an open tank in sickbay.
Oh, they have people on duty all the time. If Bashir's not there, the other Bajorans that work in there watching it. He's not the only medical professional on the station.
Oh, that's good.
But it looks like the medical staff is pretty much all Bajoran except for him. And I think that's what we're supposed to understand is these Starfleet people are just there to assist. Like there is very much a Bajoran crew that make up the majority of the staff on the station, even though they're not represented in the leadership very well. Not that we would understand our government not being represented of the people that anyway. Odo goes in the bar and everybody avoids him. It really bothered me that even Morn got up and walked away. I mean, I know we don't really know Morn, but I thought better of him. I don't know why I thought better of him, because he never says a line and we'll have no...
Was Morn the last guy that got up?
He's that weird-looking alien with the big giant face.
Yeah.
They've been using him a lot in his species a lot in Discovery.
Oh,
he's a Lorian.
Yeah.
Mark Allen Shepard plays him.
Who mourns for Odoanus?
So Morn is listed as uncredited in the pilot of Voyager and an episode of Next Gen that hasn't come up yet. But according to IMDb, he's listed in 93 episodes of DS9, but they don't include Emissary, and he was there in Emissary. So I think Morn's in more episodes than any other reoccurring character, but I'm pretty sure he never ever gets a line. So I don't know much about him.
When the mob's coming for Odo and he's behind the door and everyone gets down there and he's like, they're like, we want justice. He's like, justice? Really? It sounded like he was doing the SNL Weekend Update bit.
Seth
Meyers, yeah.
And Amy Poehler.
Yeah. It was just perfect. Like, justice? Really? And then it sounded like the music should have played, and then he would have had like 6 one-liners after that. That would have been awesome. But
he handled the mob well. I appreciate it. We got to see him really stepping up and being the commander.
On the subject of the mob, I kept wanting to talk about the I can't remember the technical term that they have like a slang term for group extras for voice acting and voiceovers when they bring in everybody to sort of play the sound effects of like somebody going, well, the mob, and I just kept hearing murderer, shapeshifter, murderer, shapeshifter. And
what do we want? A murderer. What is he? A shapeshifter.
Yeah, it did feel fake TV.
Did they throw a shoe at Sisko or a boot?
Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
Is that what inspired the guy to throw a shoe at George W?
No, that was a cultural tradition. When George W. That's something they do in Iraq is throw shoes.
Oh, okay. And then the one thing I did like is it starts a fight and Kira gets a good sock in and then does the old flip thing. I enjoyed that. Oh no, O'Brien got hit by the shoe. That's right.
Yeah, they got to have their turn. And of course Bashir breaks it up going, I found new evidence. It's a clone. And the clone was of course the victim. But I did appreciate at the end that, well, killing your own clone is still murder. You're still going to jail.
So while we're on this cloning stuff, and I'll come back to my first part on this, but so yeah, is cloning a crime or not a crime? Like,
I would think it's a crime, but they didn't even get to that.
The Cardassians wanted him because he did experimental cloning, but then the Federation is like, hey, killing your own clone is a crime. He's like,
sure,
I can't win here. But I felt like this was around the time of the sheep. Was it Dottie or Dolly?
Yeah, Dolly.
There she is, Dolly the sheep. I feel like that was around this time. Everyone was crazy for cloning. Nope. This is before that. That was Dolly was 1996.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were still. It was still in the zeitgeist. It was being talked about in the 90s. In the 90s, cloning was a much bigger topic. This was probably after the movie Multiplicity, though, wasn't it?
That's a good question.
Multiplicity, 1996. Never mind, I'm wrong.
Oh, there you go.
They all just copied off. Cloning was invented for this episode of Star Trek, and they all just copied off of it.
But I will say what I did like about the whole cloning, not a crime, not a crime. I liked that Cisco in his captain's log or whatever was just kind of like, yeah, it became sentient, and we set him free. It's like, not even, we didn't have to have a council or anything. It's like, no, this thing is sentient. This guy's sentient. He's free to go live his life. Now, he doesn't have a dime to his name, and he doesn't know anything, but Godspeed. I don't know where they set him free. He's probably going to be walking around the station for a while. Oh, he's going to be in Keiko's class. That's where he's going to.
That would have been funny.
Did they specify whether or not they like downloads memories or whatever, or how
they did not?
Yeah.
They did not. So, God, maybe that's my alternative episode.
That would be an interesting alternate.
That's my alternate episode.
My alternate episode is Data and Geordi are visiting, and Data puts on the Sherlock Holmes costume and helps Odo solve the crime.
That's good.
Or Odo just shapeshifts into Sherlock Holmes. Either way.
My original alternate episode was, and this might happen several times, but I love casinos, and they had that Goodfellas shot, which is Scorsese. Mm-hmm. It's not Casino, but Space Casino. It's just essentially what goes on in Cork's Casino. And yeah, so that
and bar and grill and holodeck.
I'll watch that. I'd watch that.
I assumed, and this was one of my fashion notes, I assumed you noticed the Dabu girls. In Quarks, the main gambling they play is Dabo.
Is that the dealer?
It's like I don't know what it is, but it's their gambling game they play, and the girls that are scantily clad are Dabo girls.
Yes, I did. In fact, I rewound to see if I saw that right, and then So
there is a major reoccurring character that's a Dabu girl, but she has not appeared in the show yet. Okay. She's not one of these actresses.
Let me just say, I'm looking forward.
Yeah, she's good. She's a good character. So I mean, we'll get plenty of Quark stories and stories of the Ferengi and stories in this bar. So we'll explore all that. He's not just a place they stop at occasionally.
Okay. Cool. So we get to where they figured out that the clone, Ibudon has a clone or whatever, and it turns out it's his ship that was in dock, and Ibudon goes back to there in his Obi-Wan Kenobi outfit, and I had to write down, was he a chair? I had to rewind to see if Odo had actually shapeshifted in a chair, and indeed he had, which, as we know, Seth MacFarlane, huge Star Trek Next Generation, assuredly a DS9 fan. There's a couple of Quagmire times where he's a chair and I think a toilet. So I think I'm going to just throw it out that I think this is where he got that idea from.
Could be.
And then I love a moment later, we have the Scooby-Doo ending where he rips his mask off.
Yeah. And the one actor is replaced by the other actor.
Yes. Yeah. And all it was missing.
And it was Red Harry the whole time.
Yeah. That's all I was missing was that and a Zoinks. That's all we needed. It would have been a Scooby-Doo ending. Although, again, as I said earlier, I enjoyed this as a whodunit. I did not guess it was a clone and all that stuff. So I like the way that all came together.
Nice. The end of the episode was Rom dragging Nog into the classroom and saying, "Stay away from Jake. Don't sit next to the human."
Yeah.
So that's the beginning of a beautiful friendship with both fathers forbidding it. It's happening.
My only other note
they are the only two boys of that age on the station.
Yeah,
so.
I like that gang.
Obviously, there's some cultural differences that they'll have to work through.
Sure. But I will say I thought it was weird timing that Keiko, when she's fighting with O'Brien, she looks down and she sees Cisco's son come in, and she's like, "Is this a place you really want to raise your child?" And I was just like, "Whoa,
yeah.
Unbelievable!" But
yeah,
I thought that was weird timing. I mean, it makes sense in the greater context, obviously, but
right. So, who was your shady character this week?
Rest in peace, Eddie Albert Jr. Keith's favorite voice, Mr. Eddie Albert Jr., or Eddie Lawrence Albert, as he was credited.
You thought he was shady? I thought he was straight up with his
I guess he was, but well, he tried to put a pretty face on.
Well, the red herringness of him made it. At least that's why I felt like he was going to be the guy.
I got you.
Right,
so I would say shady as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to go with Jake and Nog, but they got caught so easily that I'm going to have to go with Abaddon or Abaddon, whatever his name is.
When I was very, very young, I did those kinds of pranks, and so
You had fleas that turned people's skin colors?
I did worse things that I do not want to mention on this podcast.
I enjoyed their flea prank, and it was pretty harmless, other than they panicked them for a second.
Yeah, and I thought even the couple was like, "Are we high?" Or whatever. And so
Keith, who's shady?
I said the mob leader guy.
Okay, you and Steven, you're both going with him.
Yeah.
Who was your annoyance?
I started with the Trills because I was like, I can't keep track with these people. Sorry, that doesn't sound good. I can't keep track with this species. So I went back to, and I know they came around, but Keiko O'Brien.
I have to say Keiko as well. I mean, I don't want to, and I think a lot of it was the writing, but just...
mine's the whole couple. Cake.
Oh, the couple.
Yeah.
Keiko O'Brien. Okay. Yeah, I'm choosing Keiko. Yeah. I feel bad, but just the way she's written was so bad. I almost want to choose Rom because it's completely incongruous with the Rom that we meet later, but yeah, I'll choose Keiko. Keith.
I went with Jake and Nog, the prank thing.
Not everybody appreciates kids being kids.
Yeah, the over the top delight too. The whole all of it.
Jake and Nog was on at 10 o'clock, right after Odo and the Bajorn at 9 o'clock. back in the day.
Who do you want to have a drink with?
I alluded to this earlier. The Dabu dealer, the Dabu girl, Dabu lady.
Well, there were two of them credited on IMDb for this episode.
Oh, it was later in the episode because I must have missed.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
I mean, Kim Meredith and Diana Stignoni. I looked; neither one of them have much of a credit list. I mean, I almost want to say Odo, which feels very formulaic to last week, but I think Odo and Quark together. Or, I'm going to I'm just going to choose Quark. He was a lot of fun in this episode. I appreciated him. So,
you know what? While we're here, as I write it, is Dabo a portmanteau is not the right word, but Tuckerization of like Olivia Diabo?
I have no idea. No, I don't know. Dabo it's like roulette. It's got a spinning wheel. And they bet gold press latinum.
Right, but the name they chose could have been an homage to her or something like that.
Yeah, that's what
I wouldn't think so, because it didn't seem to have much to do with her, but who knows? The woman that plays the reoccurring Dabo girl is quoted as saying, "There are no rules for Dabo. It's not a real game. Paramount dropped the ball on this one. I think they should have created a game. I still think they should. It would go over like gangbusters at conventions and on cruises."
Yep.
Oh, here's where the word Dabo comes from. It means "I shall give" in Latin and "gold" in Aramaic.
Oh.
So it's a gambling game where you lose gold. That makes sense.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Kim Meredith is the actress, I think.
That was my guess for you because she's blonde.
Yeah.
Keith, who are you having a drink with?
I was leaning toward the whole Nog and Odo thing too, actually. Quark and Odo. Yeah. I'll go with Odo.
Odo? Okay. Then I will sit with Quark, you sit with Odo, and we'll look at each other across the bar. Ranking the episode, let's start with last week. Better or worse than past prologue? They were pretty similar in some ways.
Yeah.
Honestly.
As you guys both mentioned, I think they were close. I think I end up liking this more.
I agree with you. I think this edges it out. Mainly because the guest star, your mob leader, was more interesting than Jeffrey Nordling was, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only thing that makes me hesitate is Garrick.
Yeah, Garrick's pretty awesome.
That was tough.
That's true.
I think the mystery was a little more compelling this week, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right.
Better or worse than Emissary?
The Emissary wasn't the pilot. I think I would probably like this better.
Really?
But that might be recency bias, too.
Yeah, I would put Emissary first.
Yeah.
I had the similar kind of misgiving, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
Emissary number 1?
Yeah.
Okay. Mandalorian number 2. Next week, we're going back to the Enterprise D for Ship in a Bottle. Lieutenant Barclay mistakenly awakes Moriarty in the Forgotten Holodeck program.
Oh boy, Barclay.
Who then makes his demands clear and unforgettable. So we had Sherlock Holmes mystery this week. Next week, we go back into Sherlock Holmes with Daniel Davis returning as Moriarty and Dwight Schultz as Barclay. Huh. Until then, live long.
And always double down on 11. And also live long by creating your own clone and prosper.
I think they said the clone deteriorates really fast, so he won't live very long.
I think you're right.
He's good for murder, but not much else.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?